And welcome Pastor as he comes to bring the word. Is everybody all right today? We're going to talk about the Antichrist, the false prophet, and the mark of the beast. We'll be going to Revelation 13, but I have to lay some groundwork. Let me give you a quick introduction to the book of Revelation. In Revelation 1, Jesus appears to John, who is exiled on Patmos, and he tells him, I want you to write three things which were, things which are. This is in verse 19, Revelations 1, in case you're interested. Things which were, things which are, and things which are yet to come. Three things: past, present, and future. History, current events in John's day, and prophecy. Prophecy is history written in advance. So he said that's what it is. Not all of Revelation, and this gets people confused, not all of Revelation is prophecy. Some of it is history. Some of it is current events in John's day. And some of it is history written in advance. It's telling you what's going to happen. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2 and chapter 3 is Jesus' message to the seven churches of Asia, which are the seven ages of the church. We'll probably talk about that another time. In chapter 4, the rapture takes place. The church is gone. They go to the marriage supper of the Lamb, which is chapter 5. So rapture 4, the marriage supper of the Lamb, and the judgment seat of Christ is chapter 5. Now, you will never understand prophecy until you realize that God chose the seed of Abraham, the Hebrews, the Israelites, the Jews, whatever you want to call them. He chose them to be an oracle people. An oracle simply means that God was going to work out His plan for man through them, whether they liked it or not. Now, if they obeyed God, kept His commandments, God would bless them. When they got lax, prosperous, they would get lax. They would turn and start worshiping idols. Then God would curse them. He would turn them over to their enemies. Enemies would come in. They would realize they'd made a mistake. They'd turn back to God. This was a repeated process over and over and over. God was going to force them to accept that He was working out His plan through them. Now listen, everything that we have and everything that we know about God came through those people. The creation of man, the Bible, God's plan for man, everything that we know about God came through His chosen seed. Now, from God's point of view, there are three groups of people. There are the Jews, which are the natural seed of Abraham. There is the church, which is the spiritual seed of Abraham through Jesus Christ. And there are Gentiles, which is everybody else. Now the church is made up of Jews and Gentiles. Anyone, doesn't matter who they are, that will receive Jesus Christ as their Savior, their Messiah, then they become part of the church. The church age is what is called a gap. Now, if you've heard me preach, you've probably heard me mention in prophecy about the gap. The prophets saw events, an event here and an event here. But often they did not see the time frame between events, and that time frame is called the gap. They saw something here, and they saw something here, but there was a time frame of a gap that they did not see. The church of Jesus Christ is a gap. It's been going on for some 2,000 years. since Christ. This will begin to take effect on you in a few minutes. Now listen, one other thing about understanding prophecy, understanding the book of Revelation. You cannot understand Revelation without the book of Daniel. Daniel prophesied about 70 weeks. There would be 69 weeks, and then there was a break, and that started with the rejection of the Messiah. The 69 weeks would end, and then there's a gap. That's the gap, because that's where the church began. Okay, I know I'm throwing a lot at you. Daniel was in bondage in Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar had come down, conquered Israel, and he took a bunch of captives back to Babylon with him. Daniel read the prophecies of Jeremiah. And Jeremiah said that Israel would be in bondage for 70 years. And he gave several reasons as starting points for that 70 years, so nobody could confuse it. It would be from the carrying away of God's people into Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar, the blinding of Zedekiah, the final preaching of Jeremiah, and a remnant fleeing down to Egypt. That was the marking. That was the beginning of it. Now, 70 years would begin to count. They count 69 weeks, and then the gap for the church age. And from the cutting off of Messiah, that would be an end of the 69 weeks. Then, after this gap, there would be the 70th week, which would be 7 years of tribulation on the earth. There are some terrible things coming on the horizon. I think everybody is aware of that. Now, that is not to upset you or make you fearful. That is to build your faith and give you hope for the future, because you've got to understand that God is in charge. He's in control. He's pulling all the strings. He's the one that's setting the stage. I'm going to give you today a broad scope of human history written by God, recorded in His book before it happened. It's history written in advance. John was to write things which were, things which are, and things which are yet to come, past, present, and future. Now remember, keep this in your frame of mind. God is only dealing with two groups of people. The church is gone. And God is only dealing with two groups of people. He's dealing with the Jews, and He's dealing with the Gentiles. That's it. There's no other group. In Revelation 17, John says he saw a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. The 7 heads are 10 kingdoms that would persecute God's chosen people from Abraham's day until the end of time. Now those 7 kingdoms, the 7 beasts or 7 kingdoms that would persecute them, that's Egypt, Assyria, Babylonian, Medo-Persians, the Grecian Empire, and the Romans. That's 6 of them. Now, there is a gap after the Romans. That's the church age. There is a gap, and then there will be the last 10-horned kingdom. And out of that 10-horned kingdom will come the Antichrist. This is the beast out of which will rise a one-world leader, a one-world government, a one-world economy, and this one-world leader that will come on the stage of history. Now, I know I'm hitting some of you sort of cold here. In verse 8, I'm still in Revelation 17. In verse 8, he said, that beast will ascend out of the bottomless pit. And that beast is the beast that was, and is not, and is yet to come. Past, present, and future. Now watch. What in the world are you talking about? Remember, this is John's day. And he said, the beast that you saw, that is the Grecian Empire. And it is not now, because the Romans is in power. They had conquered the Grecian Empire. So the beast that was and is not and yet will come again. The beast, he's not talking about the one that was sitting on the throne. He's talking about the power that's behind the power. The spirit being that controls that government, that king. He is talking about that beast. And that beast that was in charge of the Grecian Empire, but when the Grecian Empire fell, he lost his position as well. And this spirit being in John's day was not. But he said he will come again. So that same beast that controlled the ruler of the Grecian Empire will be the same beast that will come during this 10-horned kingdom. At the end, that same beast will be in control. Now let me show you how this works. I'm in Revelation 17. I'm going to scan through several verses here. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, or 7 kingdoms. And there are 7 kings. 5 of them are fallen. 1 now is, and the other one is not yet come. 7 kingdoms. Now watch. This beast that was and is not, even he is of the 8th kingdom. That will be the 10-horned kingdom that's going to come out of the 7th, and he goes into perdition. Now, and the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings which yet have received no kingdom. Not yet. But they will receive a kingdom, and they will have power. And they'll have one mind. They'll only have one thing in mind when they come to power. And they will be given power and strength to the beast. A confederation of 10 nations will form together, and they have one thing in mind. And that is, verse 14, to make war with the Lamb. The Lamb shall overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings. Verse 15. The waters which you saw, they are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Anytime you see something out of the sea or out of the water, that's people. It has to do with people. The water, the sea, as people. They come out of people. So anyway, now, let's see if I can make some sense of this for you. Daniel prayed for 21 days and didn't get an answer. And finally, after 21 days, an angel comes and says, we heard your prayer the first day, and I was sent to deliver you this message. But the prince of Persia withstood me, and I couldn't get through. But Michael the archangel come, and he's now wrestling. He's now contending with that spirit being. And I'm free to come and deliver this message to you. So the spirit being that was over the Grecian Empire, the beast that was and is not and yet is, he is the one that's going to be over that last 10-horned kingdom, out of which the Antichrist will rise. And these 10 kings, they will have one desire: to get rid of the Jews, to fight against the Lamb. There is a war going on in the heavenlies, church. You think you're having battles down here? There is a battle going on in the heavenlies. There are angels and demons given power over kings and kingdoms and nations and cities and over churches. You've got to grasp this. I don't want to struggle to get this to you. But you don't think the devil hates this church and would like to destroy it? We are rebels behind the lines of the enemy. Satan is the prince, the power of the air, the god of this world. He is the god of this world. At this point, we're in the devil's territory, and we're fighting to take people out of the devil's kingdom and bring them into God's kingdom, and the devil doesn't like it. In fact, he doesn't like you. That's all right. I don't like him either. Revelations 13, 1 and 2. Now I'm going to skip down through it. John says, I saw a beast rise out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And upon his horns were 10 crowns. And upon his heads the name of blasphemy. This kingdom, whoever this 10-horned kingdom is, they hate God. They hate the God of the Jews. They hate the Messiah. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet as the feet of a bear, his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon, Satan, gave him his power. He's the one. Satan gave him his power, gave him his seat, and his great authority. The only authority he has comes from the powers of hell. Now listen. Nebuchadnezzar had an image, a vision, a dream. This dream terrified him, and he forgot what the dream was. And he didn't know what it meant, but he was terrified. He got all of his counselors and witches and warlocks and soothsayers, and they couldn't tell him. They said, tell us a dream, we'll tell you what it means. He said, I don't know what the dream is. Somebody said, call for Daniel. Daniel knows about dreams. He knows about these things. Daniel comes in, and Nebuchadnezzar says, I had a dream. Daniel said, I know. What you dreamed, you saw an image. And this image was a head of gold, a breast and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, legs of iron, and feet and toes of iron and clay mixed. Nebuchadnezzar says, that's what I saw. What does it mean? Daniel said, you, Nebuchadnezzar, your Babylonian kingdom is the head of gold. The breast and arms of silver, that's the Medes, the arms, the Medes and the Persians. They joined together and they conquered the Babylonian Empire. After the Medes and the Persians, the belly of brass, that was the Grecian Empire under Alexander the Great. And Alexander conquered them. But then the Grecian Empire was later conquered by Rome, the legs of iron. And the 10 toes of iron and clay mixed. How many of you know that means loosely held together? Iron and clay does not stick together very well. So they are loosely held together. That's what he saw. Now, Daniel had a dream. And that dream, he saw a beast come out of the water. And the beast was like a lion, a bear, and a leopard. And then he said it was a nondescript beast. These are 4 empires. A nondescript beast. It was something he had no description for. And suddenly this nondescript beast had 10 horns spring up and grow out of its head. And then there was a little horn that came up out of those and overcame 3 of them. And all of them gave this little horn power to rule. This is the Antichrist. Now watch. Out of 10 kingdoms, they will all give their power and support to this Antichrist leader. Now the angel gave Daniel the interpretation. He said the lion is the head of gold. That's the Babylonian Empire. The bear, that's the Medes and the Persians. The leopard, that's the Grecian. The nondescript beast, that's the same horns, and the toes of Nebuchadnezzar's vision are the same. 10 toes and 10 horns. Iron and clay. Now out of that will come the Antichrist. Okay, I know I'm painting in broad scopes here. Verses 3 and 4. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power to the beast, the government, and they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, and who is able to make war with him? When you worship the Antichrist, you also worship the power behind the Antichrist, which is Satan himself. Verses 5 and 6. I'm going through this pretty quick. We'll clear it up next week maybe. There was given to him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, wonderful things, Daniel calls it. He has magic words. He speaks blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. He opened his mouth to blaspheme God, blaspheme his name. He hates God and his tabernacle and them that dwell therein. Now, I have to stop here to fill you in. If you're ever going to understand what's going on today, you're going to have to understand what's coming down the road and what you're being prepared for. The tribulation period is divided into two sections. The 7 years. There'll be 3.5 years and 3.5 years. 42 months, 1,260 days in each half. He's given power, absolute power, the last half, because when he comes as a man of peace. And the world will be shut down. There will be such confusion in the world, men's hearts failing them for fear of what's coming. Things are going to be bad. And all at once, here is this leader out of the Middle East, out of the area of the old Grecian Empire, the same territory. He will come and he will speak such wonderful words. He will have answers. You'll see this next week when we get in Daniel. He has wonderful words. He brings peace, and he's been wounded in the head and dead. And yet he's alive. And the world marvels at how he has the ability to speak and speak such wonderful things. And the first 3.5 years, he will come as a man of peace. He will set up his throne in Jerusalem. He will rebuild the temple. The Jews will accept him as Messiah because he brings peace. He comes speaking peace. Now, the Antichrist will have to be a Jew. And he will come from the area of the Grecian Empire, Assyria, because he is called the Assyrian. So he will be a Jew, but he will be from Assyria. Now, in the middle of the tribulation, the first 3 years, he's going to do all these wonderful things, and everybody thinks he's so wonderful, and the Jews will accept him as the Messiah. In the middle of the tribulation, the end of 3.5 years, he will come to absolute power. 42 months, and he will turn on the Jews, and I'll show you how it happens. When they say peace and safety, that's when sudden destruction comes, and the last 3.5 years is what's called the day of Jacob's trouble. Verse 7. Now this leader was given unto him power to make war with the saints. Now that's not the church. That's the Jews. The church is gone. He's turned back to his chosen people. And power was given him over all kindreds, tongues, and people. All of the world will worship him. And all that dwell on the earth worship him. There'll be no escape. If you're a Gentile and left and you're thinking you're going to refuse to take the mark of the beast and go to heaven, not going to happen. All that dwell on the earth worship him. Skip down to verse 11. I held another beast, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. He has the same power that the first beast had, and he causes the earth and them that dwell in it to worship the first beast. Okay, now stop. Satan is going to have 2 agents that carries out his purpose on the earth. The Antichrist and the false prophet. The political and the religious leader of the world. He does great wonders. He calls fire down from heaven on the earth in sight of all men. He deceived them that dwell on the earth by means of the miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. They worked together. They were a team. And he said to them, the false prophet said to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image of the beast that was wounded by a sword and died, but he's alive. And he had power, the false prophet had power to give life to the image of the beast, that the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Okay, now let's stop for a minute. Just think what would happen. Here is this world leader. He has the attention of the world. He has rebuilt the temple. The Jews have accepted him as Messiah. The false prophet comes, a religious leader, and says, we've got to build an image to this great leader. And they take this great leader. What do you think would happen if this religious leader, the eyes of the world are upon them? Thousands of television cameras, satellites beaming all over the world. And there's some big event. I think that event will be the dedication of the temple. It will take them 3.5 years, 42 months, 1,260 days to get it built. They're having a dedication of the temple and the world is watching. And suddenly this religious leader calls fire down from heaven and everybody sees it. And then he speaks and causes the image to begin to speak things that no one has ever heard before. And he says everybody has got to bow down, put this image in the temple. And at this point the Jews recognize that's not the Messiah. God's law says, thou shalt not bow down before any graven image. And they recognize this is not the Messiah. And now the Antichrist and the false prophet turn on the Jews. And this is the day of Jacob's trouble. And you talk about hell on earth. It is not going to be pretty. Satan is going to have these two images. And it says all the world will worship this image of the beast. There are unseen forces at war in the heavenlies. And there are some terrible things coming on this earth in the last days. And God's people better come to grips with the fact that God is the boss. Amen. Yeah, go ahead and give God a hand. That's okay. He's either God or he's not God. But if he is God, now listen, if he is God, he does not have to please us. We have to please him. And he does not have to accept us. We have to accept him.